Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time clicking on my channel. Thank you so much. My name's Mare. Welcome to the Marathon. Today I wanted to go through a lot of your questions and share with you my experience about going back to school and graduating at the age of 40. This video has been on my to-do list since August, and it is now the last week of November, so thank you for your patience. I know many of you have been asking about it and considering going back to school later in life as I did, so I hope that you find this helpful. If you have any more questions that I don't answer, you can just leave them down below and I will do my best to do so. Also, if you've gone back to school later in life, please feel free to comment your experience, because we can all learn from one another. And I did actually, just before turning the camera on, create a playlist of videos that I shot throughout my university experience over the last few years. So if I don't cover something in today's video, maybe it will be in one of those. You can go from the time where I shared with you that I had signed up for school right through until I finished my program and I talked about becoming a counselor. So some of that, what I share in those videos, I'm not going to share with you today. Like, there's an office tour, some of my office favorites, that sort of thing, which I think is crucial to going back to school, but you can watch those videos as well. So a bit of a backstory. I initially went to journalism school in my early 20s and became a journalist. I was a radio reporter and news anchor for a few years, and then I was a morning radio host for a decade. And I always felt like that was my first career. I never thought that's something that I would do forever. And even in my short radio career, I really saw the media industry change. I knew, again, even further that that's not what I wanted to do. And so I quit radio in 2016. And in 2015, before I did so, I started my own business, Redhead Mare Media. And that was a way for me to leave broadcasting and be able to make a living while figuring out what I wanted to do for the rest of my working life. I knew that that business was kind of like a stopgap. Also, if you're not familiar with my story, I needed to be home and I needed to have a very flexible schedule, which starting my own business definitely allowed me to. So for Redhead Mare Media, since 2015, so 8 years, I have been running my own business, helping local businesses with their social media, and I still do it. I still run the business and I still really enjoy it, and it has given me that flexibility to be a single parent and to be a widow and to really take care of my son. And then when I always knew that wasn't something that was going to be long term. Again, I think because my media background, I thought social media is going to change so much. This may not be a long-term thing also. And so in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I had just released my first book, the best-selling Finding Your Cape, How to Course Correct and Achieve Greatness When Things Don't Go As Planned. Makes a great Christmas present. That came out in January of 2020, and then we all know what happened in March of 2020. And being home really gave me some time to reflect, and I decided, now or never, let's go back to school. And it was a great time for me because I always knew I was gonna have to go back to school, and I was going to have to do it online, again, for the flexibility of being a parent. And also just where I live, there's no university in my city. I would have to drive over an hour each way, and that was just not feasible. So then when everything went online, I thought, right, here's my chance. So I started school in the fall of 2020 and went to school for 3 years, but I did get a 4-year degree. I haven't even said that. I graduated with my Bachelor's of Social Work. And the reason why I only had to do 3 years and not 4 is because when I applied for my program, I used I did 1 year of university right out of high school, and I submitted those marks, and I also submitted my journalism school, and they were able to combine some of that, I guess, and it counted for a year of school. So that was fantastic because I thought I wouldn't be graduating until next year. And I also really knew that I wanted to go into being a therapist. For a very long time, I have thought that that's what I would do, and then my life experience really, you know, helped that, and also this channel and sharing with you my journey and doing like writing Finding Your Cape as well. So I started also in 2020 to get a lot of marathoners messaging me saying like, hey, I need some counseling. Can you do some counseling with me? And I did a little bit, like some online master classes and groups and stuff, but I really wanted to have the academia and the science behind, like, I know what worked for me and what helped me, but like why and what else could help other people. So I stopped doing that and then enrolled in full-time school. So in order to get into my program, which I went to the University of Calgary, I needed to do some other courses in order to apply for that. So my first year of school was at our local college, again online. I had to do 2 intro to social work classes, like some English. I did an anthropology class, I did a women's studies class, and got those prereqs so that in 2021 I could apply for the Bachelor of Social Work program at U of C. When it came to picking what school I would actually do my university 2 years of the program at, there are a few universities in Canada that offer a Bachelor's of Social Work online. So I applied to U of C and UVic, and I got into both. So then I actually talked to some marathoners who were in the social work field and asked like, hey, which program would you recommend? And ultimately U of C came highly recommended. It's the biggest social work school in the country. And another thing I really liked is that their online program, which is called the Virtual Learning Circle, didn't start during COVID. It had started years before, so it was like a well-oiled machine. Another question I get a lot is like, why social work and not a Bachelor's of Psych? So a really good friend of mine is a social worker, and she was the one who suggested it to me, and I will be forever in debt to her, because when you have a Bachelor of Social Work, you can actually get a job, but there's not a lot of jobs where if you have a Bachelor's of Psychology, you can just like become a counselor, whereas social work, kind of like journalism, it felt a lot more like a trade at university. Like I was learning specific skills to be able to graduate and hit the ground running and start working, and that really appealed to me. So I was very ignorant and naive as to the industry of social work and the career of social work. Honestly, all I knew about it was MCFD and working with kids, and that was like absolutely not something that I was interested in doing. But social work is a very large umbrella, and they work with people of all ages, from newborns to end of life and hospice. They do a lot of advocacy work, they do a lot of political work. So the more I thought about it, and then they also do, you know, counseling, group counseling, trauma counseling, grief counseling, all the things that I am now doing. And so that's ultimately why I chose a Bachelor's of Social Work. So that's kind of like the story of me going back to school. It was all done online, except for 1 week. I did go to Calgary at the beginning of this year for a block week, like an intensive, and there was supposed to be one last year, but it was during another outbreak, if you will, and so unfortunately that was online as well. I had classmates like basically in every single province, which was cool, and a lot of mature students, and that was something that I was really worried about going back to school. Like, am I going to be the grandma? Am I going to be the old lady who doesn't understand the tech or what the kids are talking about? When I did my first college year, there was definitely kids like right out of grade 12 in my classes. But a lot of mature students, especially in the social work program, is a lot of people who, like me, were coming into it as a second or third career. I even had guys who were coming out of being like tradespeople and wanted to do something that wasn't so hard on their body. Then there was people who had been kind of working in the field but wanted the degree. So it ended up not being that big of an issue, and honestly, like, who cares if I had been the grandma anyways. To me, it worked in my favor for this program because I've had so much life experience. I found a lot of the projects or case studies, that sort of thing, a little bit more palatable, or I could be more empathetic, I think, just from my life experience. I got a lot of questions about like how I managed it, how I afforded it, would you recommend quitting your job, how I balanced it, etc. Was I nervous? I would say nervous for sure. And one thing about doing it online is it can be quite isolating and quite lonely. So what I did, both when I went to college and then when I started my program at UFC, is I like paid attention in the first week or two to people in my Zoom and tried to decipher who I would maybe have something in common with, and I DM'd them or emailed them and was like, hi, would you like to be my friend? Honestly, because I thought I just need one person who I can email with or I can bounce questions off of, and that worked out great for me. So it was a little bit like putting myself out there, but I needed someone, not just this like abyss of students, so that was very helpful. A few reasons it played in my favor being older. For one, I had owned my own business since 2016, and I had been a working professional since, when did I start working in radio? 2005. So I was very adept at working to deadline. I was very like used to, you know, nobody holding my hand, nobody paying attention to what I was doing, being very responsible, great time management. So that all really worked in my favor, because you have to be very efficient with your time when you go back to school, especially if you're working full-time, which I was. And that was a question I got, like, would you recommend quitting your job and going to school? Everybody is different, but my program, another reason why I really liked it, is it was designed so that you could work full-time and still get your credits and graduate. So I think everyone in my program was working full-time. Our Zoom classes were at night, and that I think was very helpful. You know, I didn't have classes during the day. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone worked full-time. So that's subjective to, you know, what's your program? How much time are you going to have to put into it? What else do you have on your plate? But in saying that, what worked well for me, because I was working full-time, I was parenting full-time, while I was in school, my now husband moved in. So many things happened behind the scenes, as most of you know, during school. I think a benefit to that is I only had a specific amount of time that I could dedicate to school. So like, I couldn't obsess over projects or papers or studying because I had a finite amount of time. So like, some of my mantras, which you gave me, were done is better than perfect. Even C's get degrees. Those were my two that you had given me before I started school. Done is better than perfect. I actually think I produced better work because I couldn't obsess over it. I couldn't go over and over and over it because I had very strict boundaries with my time. Let's take a little drink. I'm also gonna put this blanket on me because I am cold. Get cozy. That's one nice thing about going to school at home, is you can be cozy. So speaking of time, I was very boundaried with my time. I would not work after dinner. And I think I only did like once or twice, and except for when I had class, obviously, because classes were 5 to 7 for like in my time zone. I would not do work after dinner because I know myself, like I need to wind down. I'm already a very bad sleeper, and I didn't want to be working and then be stressed about school and then try to just immediately fall asleep. I wanted to parent and spend time with my boyfriend, then fiance, now husband. I wouldn't work after dinner. Like once dinner was ready, I would close this office door and I wouldn't come back until the morning. And I would not work on Sundays. So that is, I think, how I kept my sanity, is really being boundaried with my time. Also, I have very wonderful friends, and they were patient knowing that I was pretty absent for those 3 years. And most of them stuck around, which I'm very appreciative of. I said no to a lot of things. I appreciated still being invited. I saw my friends when I could, but it's a really big sacrifice. And I kept saying that, like, I don't think people understand how much of a sacrifice it is to go back to school. Like, you really have to want it and you really have to commit to it. What helped me was that end goal. My end goal in going to school was become a therapist, create a better, more secure future for myself and for my son. That was like the carrot that dangled for 3 years, honestly, because there were tough times. Like when I was in college, my English class, I had a professor that not once did I hear from except to get marks, and then when I would email them, like never heard from them one time. There's a lot of tough times, like, but it's a real commitment, it's a real sacrifice. So having that, like, this is why I'm doing it. It wasn't just I'm going back to school for the sake of it. It was specific for me, and I think that's what really pushed me through. So I think that's how I managed it. Very boundaried with my time. I was also very like disciplined. Every Saturday I would do schoolwork from about 8 till 3 or 4. We didn't have a weekend for 3 years. Now I have a weekend, and it's still so exciting to me to like get up on the weekend and not have to immediately come in here. I got a question like, how much time specifically did I dedicate? And I would say on average maybe 25 or 30 hours a week. But it could have been more and it could have been less. Like, probably very organized. In one of my videos I show, like, I have a large calendar for assignments, and then I had a paper planner, and every day I would put what I was gonna do. And then I also had like my phone calendar. But in the planner, that is one thing that I would say really helped me, is I would look at like what was due or what I had to do, and then I would put it on different days. So if it was Monday and I needed to read 2 chapters, but it wasn't due until Saturday, I would maybe read it on the Friday. So it wasn't on my to-do list on the Monday. That's how I really helped. That's how I worked on not getting overwhelmed, is I like assigned things to do for different days. So if it was Monday, I don't have to worry about Thursday's work, Tuesday's work, that's the future. And I was really able to compartmentalize, which helped a lot. I think also, you know, I'm self-employed, so I can't say how hard it is to work for someone else and go back to school. Like, my job, my business is very flexible. I do it when I do it. And so that, I think, also comes into play. I got questions on how I afforded it. So I have a financial advisor, and I have a pretty robust investment portfolio. So when I decided to go back to school, he and I met and we talked about, do I use money from my investments to pay for school, or do I get a student loan? And ultimately we decided to leave the investments to grow, and they've grown quite a bit in the last 3 years. So I took out student loans to pay for school while my investments grew, and then once I was done school, I just paid off the loan in full. Like, obviously that's not everybody's story, that's not the case for everybody, but that's what I did, like, full disclosure, because it's not cheap. Going back to school is so expensive, and that's like one of my things that I think would make such a difference in the world is if post-secondary was free. Like, imagine how many more like health professionals we would have or teachers we would have. Like, it is so cost prohibitive to go back to school, and I totally understand that. So that is something that like makes me irate when I think about it, but that's how I did it. Mentally, how did I get through it? Well, a very supportive partner. My mom, she was integral in me going back to school because she would hang out with Thomas once a week for me. But mentally, what worked for me was done is better than perfect, even C's get degrees, and I only focused on the task at hand, like very specific, the task at hand, and I would not let myself get too wound up about it. Again, I think that's where my age came in that helped. Like, this is just a paper, this is just an assignment. I kept saying to myself, like, no therapy client is gonna ask what you got on this test. No one's gonna ask what your marks were. Like, your degree is gonna hang on the wall and that's gonna suffice. So that realistic approach served me very well. This is the task at hand. Let's not get too upset about it. Let's just, okay, we're done complaining, like, let's go. What's the end goal here? A career as a therapist. Being able to counsel marathoners, being able to be a therapist, like, and help people who are grieving. Like, I just kept that in mind. Also, I worked out 6 days a week, and that saved me. Like, for sure that did. We have a basement that has a Peloton, and I have a Peloton treadmill and weights, and I worked out every single morning diligently. That helped my mental health immensely. I also meditated 7 days a week. Not long. Like, the workouts were like maybe an hour, sometimes half an hour. Meditations were like 10-15 minutes, but I was so diligent about that time, and I know that that helped me mentally. And like, you know, I would have gotten exercise, so if I was sitting at my desk now for 8 hours, it was fine. Also, I would specifically take a lunch break, which I've always done working from home. I always don't work noon to 1. I always take an hour. I leave my office. I make food. I sit and watch something. Like, I have a break. And speaking of watching something, I always joke that like the 3 things that got me through school were Peloton, Coke Zero, and Drag Race. Like, those 3 things. And I say that because, like, obviously my program was very heavy. I did not watch anything heavy for 3 years. I did not listen to anything heavy. I did not read any, well, I barely read for pleasure, that's for sure. But like, now, the Unicorn and I have so many shows that we've been catching up on because we just kept putting it on the to watch list. I was like, I can't watch anything heavy. It's not happening. Oh, and then I got questions if I'm still planning to do my master's. Yes, I am. My program ended, I finished at the end of June, but the program actually didn't finish until the end of August. And I only convocated this month, so I wasn't able to start a master's program this fall. And thank goodness, because that was always my plan. I can't imagine being in school right now. I need a mental break. I'm so thrilled to be working. I will do my master's, but I might do it like a course at a time. I will definitely do it part-time and work full-time. And I'm debating either a master's of social work or a master's of counseling. But I think that's kind of it. I hope that that like gives you a well-rounded look at my school experience. I would recommend it for sure because every single day I go to my office and every single day I see a client as a therapist. Inside, I'm like, holy shit, you did it. This is your job. You are a registered social worker. You are a therapist. Like, my dream has come true. Like, every single day I'm like, oh my God. So yes, it's worth it, but you really have to have a why and be very diligent about it. Like, I said it a lot, like, going back to school is no joke. Going back to school is not for the faint of heart. Like, you really have to want to do it. It's only now that I'm not in school that I can fully appreciate how much work it was. Because, you know, when you're in it, you're just like, next assignment, and now I have so much free time. Like, oh my God. I think we're still like, we're always like, I think we're still recovering from school. Like my whole family. But I think that's it. I think that's all I really have to share from your questions. If you have any more, like I said, leave them down below. If you went back to school, I would love to know like your experience. If it was different than mine, if you have any other tips. And if you're going back to school, I wish you all the best. Get a good playlist, get a comfortable chair, a lot of caffeine. Anyways, life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Please lace up and subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it if you did. If you know anyone who wants to go back to school or is going back to school, please share this video with them. Remember, you can do anything for 10 minutes, and I will see you in the next video as we head into December. Take care. Bye.